trucks. That's what it's for.
Okay, I'm going to call this meeting of the Historic Resources Board to order. Today is Tuesday, May 9th, and we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. So please join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Today's the 7th.
Did I say 9th? Yeah. Thank you, Richard.
You're a grammar teacher.
Yeah, we're back to the future. All right, let's start with roll call, please. I guess that will be Roger.
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah. Okay, yeah.
You're going to wear many hats tonight.
HRB Board Member Garrett, present.
Are you here tonight?
Yeah.
Present.
He didn't hear.
Georgiana Gillard,
Yes.
present. Wanda Gubert,
Here, present.
Dennis Franco,
Here.
Dave Medeiros.
Here.
All present and accounted.
Okay, do we have any items for public comment? Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to bring forward an item that's not on the agenda? No, okay.
Well, I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce, for some of you that don't know, Matt Leal's been with us for about 6 to 8 months now. He is a graduate of Cal Poly in planning, and he has been working, and Matt, come on up here, and he's been working on our housing element completed. And he only comes in, Fridays and every other Friday, so it's kind of lingered on, but he's done an excellent job. He's got the draft to me, and I'm reviewing it. And he's done a good job on it and everything. And then I approached the city council at our budget session, and we're going to bring Matt on as an assistant planner.
Wow.
Beginning next year, in June. And so then he'll be here available so he can really do some planning, and we're going to teach him the ropes and stuff, and he's well qualified.
That's great.
So,
Congratulations.
Yeah, so I'm from Hollister originally, born and raised here, and then, like Roger said, I went down to Cal Poly and got a degree in city and regional planning. Kind of went out to North Dakota, followed my fiance out there. She was coaching softball, able to get some experience in planning out there, and currently I'm in Santa Cruz, working as a transportation planning technician for the county. So yeah, been there about 2 years and kind of been helping out Roger since I put in my 40 hours over there, and I live in Hollister. I just figured I'd kind of keep the city planning as well as transportation planning experience, kind of put that on my resume, and Roger asked if I'd be willing to help him out a little bit more, and actually my position over there was kind of going to be cut back to part-time, so it was kind of perfect timing. So I'm definitely excited about being here in San Juan and being a little bit closer to Hollister. So.
Were you involved with the design charrette that the San Luis Obispo students did a number of years ago? It wasn't that long ago.
I wasn't, but I know some of the students that did participate. Yeah. So I think that was like the class above me.
Okay. It was probably, how many years ago?
I don't remember.
Yeah, I don't remember anymore.
And the family comes from a pedigree of planners. His sister is a planner over in the city of Hollister. His dad is a designer, and he's also a graduate landscape architect.
Wow, good.
Yeah, so.
Very good.
And he's very helpful to people who need help. I was trying to tell him something was too heavy for me to move, and he helped me move it the other day.
Yeah.
That's great. Well,
yeah, I was walking past and she was, rearranging her shop, and I was like, let me see what I could do here.
That's great.
That's good.
Good. Well,
Yep.
welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Thank you, Roger. Okay, do we have any informal project reviews?
None.
Hearing none. Okay, then let's move on to item 4, presentations. May is National Preservation Month, and at the City Council meeting, we're going to present a certificate of recognition to a business owner or property owner in town that has done exemplary work in stewarding their building. We have to decide that tonight, but I'll read the proclamation that will be given out on the next City Council meeting, which I think is the 21st, right? 2 weeks.
7 and 14 and 21.
Okay. All right, so this reads, City of San Juan Bautista, California Certificate of Recognition. Whereas the function of the City Planning Commission is to guide and maintain the orderly development of the city, and in the process recognize the efforts of individuals in implementing the policies of the city as listed in the city's general plan and other policy documents. And whereas the San Juan Bautista Planning Commission is implementing a new program to recognize business owners that have made significant improvements to their properties in commercial areas that enhance and maintain the overall area and help to attract visitors to the city. And whereas in difficult economic times when the need to maintain community spirit, certain business people see that there is hope for economic recovery for the city and take action to make it happen. And whereas the month of May is National Preservation Month, and the City of San Juan Bautista supports the Secretary of the Interior standards for the treatment of historic properties, which are intended to promote responsible presentation practices that help protect our nation's irreplaceable cultural resources. And whereas the Planning Commission wishes to recognize a business owner that has acted voluntarily to exemplify the city's goals and efforts to maintain its historical ambiance and the structures that make it so by preserving the structure in accordance with the following city policies. Okay. Upgraded the entire structure, maintaining its historic influence in the city. Extended the economic life of the building while maintaining its exterior facade to keep the Old West feeling that residents are accustomed to and visitors expect to see. Engaged in the reuse of historic materials, used local craftsmen to carry out the work, complied with the requisite city regulations, used the rehabilitated structure to house local businesses. Now, therefore, be it resolved, at its meeting on May 7th, 2012, the Planning Commission of the City...
23rd.
20...
We're going to change that.
Yeah, I'm not good at that. Okay. At its meeting on May 7th, 2013, the Planning Commission of the City of San Juan Bautista, on behalf of the citizens of San Juan Bautista, acted to recognize the efforts of, in improving the commercial area of the city through the preservation efforts to the building at blank, and thanks them for being involved citizens. And this will be presented by the Planning Commission at the City Council meeting, May 21st, right? Okay.
I think that we can change some of the wording so that it seems like it's in the past. The second, whereas
Okay.
San Juan Bautista Planning Commission has implemented
Right.
a, or
A-
the new,
a-
and leave out
yeah.
new, and
Yeah,
it's
program.
changed the tense because this was our first one, this will be our second.
Good point. Anything else? Any other changes? Okay. Ben, let's move
Good.
on. Good.
Thank you.
This was done by Ernest and Georgiana last year.
Oh, okay.
It was, we presented to Dawn and Sandra Ponzini. They deserved it. There are many worthy
We
candidates.
took their picture, and we hope you'll be there to take the picture of whoever we choose this time.
All right.
All right, we'll move on to number 5, action items. A is to approve the affidavit of posting agenda, and we need a motion for that.
There being a certified document in our packet, I move that we accept it.
All in favor?
Second.
Second. Okay. Now we have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
The next item is to consider recommendation to the Planning Commission, the CEQA and mitigated negative declaration requirements at 104 The Alameda, the brewery. And I thought I would, before we start that, I thought I would read, if I can find it, what you're recommending, Roger. And I moved it. Now I can't find it. Yeah, okay. Thank you. So the recommendation for our plan tonight is to receive the staff report on the brewery. Number 2, receive presentation from project architect. 3, open for public comments. 4, close public comments. 5, HRB review initial study, discuss and deliberate project. 6, HRB makes a determination on the basis of the initial study and information provided that the proposed project could have a significant effect on the environment and that a mitigated negative declaration with mitigation measures and conditions of approval be prepared that could be required for the project, that a less than significant effect on the environment would occur. Now,
So basically, we're not making any decisions. We want to do is to make sure we have enough information
there we go.
to direct staff to prepare a document. So, it probably isn't exempt from CEQA, and there is an indication there could be some problems, so it probably a negative declaration won't do. But a mitigated declaration to overcome some of the concerns would bring any impact to less than significant. And that's the bottom line. At any point we feel this is significant, the impacts, then we have to go for an environmental impact report, the full document. So let's see what we can do. If we come up with a concern, can it be mitigated to less than significant? And if it can't, we direct staff to take the appropriate action, and that's a call for an environmental impact report, which means they get a consultant and all the work is done and paid for by the applicant.
Okay, thank you for that.
Okay.
Roger?
Yeah. Members of the board, chairman, members of the board, my staff report is here, and it kind of outlines in detail it's not a new project to you. It's been in front of you in two informal presentations, and then the commission and the board took a tour of the facility, and you've seen firsthand what it is. The applicant is really proposing is to do two phases of it, and the first phase would be is for the taking and salvaging the existing brewery building, and then removing it, and then relocating it, and then constructing a parking lot and landscaping and walkways and stuff like that. Second phase is a commercial building behind the brewery building and behind the parking lot, and it will be a two-story structure with commercial units on the bottom and three smaller residential units on top with parking. I'm going to kind of turn it over to the project architect, Leslie, and she can kind of give you a detail of the proposal, and then we go back and then we'll review the initial study on point basis. Good.
Thank you, Roger. Good evening, board members. I was glad most of you had an opportunity to actually go out and visit the site. The intent of the project is to remove and maintain as much as we can from the existing building, but relocate it closer to the street at the corner, so it's now matching the street. So it's parallel to the street. The intent is to maintain the look and as many of the exterior and interior materials that we can, and reestablish the building to what would be considered its contemporary look and feel, as opposed to its initial look as the original brewery. The original brewery did not include an overhang on either end of the building, but that was added in the 20s with the knee braces on the exterior, on the ends of the building. However, originally there was also a deck across the front of the building, or it was a porch at that time. The intent would be to reestablish the porch. Right now it's just sort of fallen into disrepair, and so there are a few steps that were added at a certain point that were constructed out of concrete. However, the intent would be to reestablish the front entry deck as originally intended. There would be a ramp that will be added to make sure that we're meeting accessibility standards. That will be off to the side, so it will not be on the front elevation of the building. So all other parts of the building will appear as they are now, with the exception of the additional covered front area. And I actually have the original drawing our original photograph, if we've seen this and you have it. in
Did
the
you,
package.
we scanned the photo on a high-resolution scanner. Did you get?
This is
okay,
it,
okay.
yeah. So, so the intent is to do, as you can see also in our drawing, is to, once again, reestablish the front porch area as well as the overhang, and that matches, in many cases, actually matches the detail of the Plaza Hotel, that same look and feel of the Plaza Hotel. But the intention would be to match that. Since the front facade of the existing building has kind of collapsed from that. So it's going to need to be sort of a combination of what's existing and then what was historically significant in the past.
Thank you. Commissioners, do you have, yes? Are you still?
I can, maybe the best thing is to ask me questions and then we can kind of go through the process.
Okay. Do you want to start, Pat?
I have no questions.
Okay.
I'll do
Georgiana?
When we use the word originally, contemporary, in the past, are you talking 1920 or before or what?
Well, and that's kind of somewhat difficult with this building because it went through so many iterations. I mean, originally it was a commercial building, and now it's been most recently a residential building. In fact, apartments, separate units. So.
Excuse me, would you move closer to the mic? I think it would probably help.
So the intent is to reestablish the use as a commercial use. And in order to reestablish the use as a commercial use, then some of the existing conditions need to clearly change. One of the most important things is there are a lot of interior partitions, wall partitions, and that are not consistent with commercial use that have been added over time. There was also, as we know, the basement that was excavated after the fact that we would not look at reestablishing. So the intent is to reestablish the original commercial use of the building and to include this facade.
So the original commercial use, did it span about 40 years from 1880 up to 1920?
Yes, yeah.
So this picture would be about 1920.
No, this was actually earlier.
Earlier.
Because it was actually
Good.
in the 20s that they actually went about what happened in the 20s, and actually what you could, so that the combination of one of the reasons, and Pat, you may want to weigh in on this, but one of the reasons I'm thinking that they actually extended the roof structure is because what happens when you build, when you construct this, is it's not a very durable structure because you don't have an overhang here. And so over time, then the existing structure as it is now was added with the knee braces on either end. And so if we look at, on your plans, when we look at sheet number A2.0, we were actually showing those as existing, and then we actually we removed those. So there's
And you can see, I'll pass this photo around, where she's talking about the gable end and the overhang, and then
The
the
gable
corbels,
end.
the
Yeah.
corbels that go out, and you can see it
Yeah.
at each end. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was actually more consistent with a transition to a more residential structure. So the intent is to really take it back to the more original structure,
So it'll be less of a craftsman look.
less of the craftsman, and more of what was
So when we see the word 1920, we're thinking pre-1920.
pre-1920.
I understand, actually, I'm sorry if I stepped over your toes, from the preservation architect that originally came out, that the room, the step-down room is not original. So are you
It's
keeping
not.
that, or you're losing it?
Losing
Okay.
it, yeah.
So that, when we look at the roof now, that will go.
Yes.
So this is now.
Yeah.
Okay, Pat knows this. Let's get these back to Roger. Thank you.
Okay. I viewed the DVD, the CMAP DVD of the Preservation Architect's presentation
Right.
a year ago. And he said, according to the Sanborn maps, it looked like the original street seemed to have run parallel to the structure.
It
and,
did.
and to me, that's kind of a character-defining feature because it places it in that time, and it shows the evolution of the street pattern. So I don't know where we are with all this. I'm inclined not to move the building. In fact, his drawings showed having the eating, dining area in the front, where
Right.
the visible pedestrian area that would be very appealing to the gateway. So the eatery, the outdoor dining would be here,
Right.
rather than moving it all the way forward to the street. Well, you want to go ahead?
Yeah. I lived on the Monterey Peninsula, and we a lot of historical stuff. I lived in Pacific Grove for many years
Yes.
and saw some devastations that I can't live with. So we're talking about a building that has historical values of the city of San Juan Bautista.
Yes.
And we're going to take it down, dismantle it, stack it up, rebuild, and then use the facade, everything on the facade. My concern is, how many of these has your company done?
Well, you're familiar with Monterey, so we've actually done quite a few. For many years, we worked actually directly with Gil Sanchez Architects, and so we were responsible, if you're familiar with the Monterey City Hall, we were actually the project architect for the complete re-roofing and rework of that building, which was a fairly significant project, which was the slate roof. And so for many years we worked with Gil on a variety of different projects. We've done four projects in San Jose. We did 2 projects in San Luis Obispo, and I believe it was 3 or 4 in Monterey. So although our focus is not principally historic architecture, we have definitely worked on historic projects and also have used Gil as a resource, but we actually worked in partnership on those projects for a long period of time.
Okay, my concern is that this project's on the start, and I want to make sure it finishes the
Yes.
way it was intended.
Yeah.
Is the applicant capitalized to carry out this project?
That's
That-
not
that-
really
that's
something
one of the-
that I can really respond to, because that's...
But you can see where I'm coming from, is all of a sudden, gee, that's too bad, we can't do any more, so we'll just close it up, or forget about it, and we've got a building taken down, sitting in a warehouse someplace, and San Juan Bautista has lost. I don't want that to happen. And as I sit up here, it won't happen. So but everything I do or say is going to be concerned with, will this project reach fruition the way that the commission did? And I don't know what's going to be approved yet, but whatever's approved will be the commission's speaking for the city, the soul of the city and its plans,
Right.
and say, okay, we want to see it happen.
Yes.
And I like the idea of reusing it. I have no problem in the restaurant. I have no problem with the part in the back. But when you say phase 1 and phase 2, I can see phase 1 going in, but I get concerned, will phase 2 ever go in? See, so that's the kind of questions that I'm concerned for the big picture before this final approval goes on.
Right, and just a little bit about our experience as a firm, and just to kind of take a step back, and so you can kind of get an idea of where we are also, is our firm, we started 27 years ago, and we've been in practice. One of the things, I don't know if you've had an opportunity ever to go to Morgan Hill and check out the granary, but we took an older building there, a granary of about, it's around 20,000 square feet now, and completely rehabbed it It was originally built in the 20s and then added on to in the 40s and then the 50s, and completely rehabbed that and it has really become an amazing resource to the city of Morgan Hill. We actually have a restaurant in there now, as well as our office and many other offices. And we've also, one of the things I think that you'd be particularly interested in too is one of the things about that area was really the orchard breadbasket of the world. It was the Valley of Heart's Delight. And so the focus was really to reestablish the downtown as an area that really was able to express and show what was historically present before. And so we planted orchard of apricots and prunes, and so we have 45 trees there. And I would really recommend going and looking at that. It was a very simple project. Well, it wasn't a simple project. That was a really difficult project. But it's also a LEED Gold project. So we have a significant amount of experience. We were the architect, we were also the contractor, and we were the developer for that. So it was a significant project in the city. It was about a $3 million project. I understand completely your concern on this project. I think that I think that with our experience both in development, construction, and with historic projects, my intention is to really assist the owner in being able to understand the intentions of the historic board in terms of what you're really looking at, what we're looking at as the architect, and what we all realize is a significant resource here to the city. That this building is significant. And I think when you cut down the trees, when the trees were cut down, it was like, wow. I think many people didn't even realize that the building had been there. And so it is really important. And that's going to be incumbent upon us, but it's also going to be incumbent on all of us to make sure that the construction occurs in the manner that it needs to.
And again, when we get into conditions of approval and specific mitigations, we can explore financial resources to make sure that there are performance bonds in place that will keep that continuity and the phases going. Yeah.
Yeah, the only question I have at this time, listening to all the questions we've had thus far, one of the questions that was brought up is we would like to see the building stay where it's at right now. And I haven't heard any discussion as to if that could be feasible, if that could be a possibility, leaving it where it is, and if we're going to restructure it, it would be right there in the same spot. And one of the things that I noticed about the building itself, it's in line with 3rd Street and not with the Alameda. So I wonder if there's any significance there that we need to explore to ensure that it stays in where it's at right now. And I requested through the architecture if we could see some drawings with the building where it's at right now, and see where we can progress from that point.
Okay. And we can kind of look at that in terms of it's on that, but also it would be pretty much in this direction.
Yeah, one of the considerations along those lines is that as a gateway structure and as a pedestrian-oriented town, we're not particularly keen on adding lots of parking spaces. We'd really rather see more outdoor dining, perhaps in the big front of the building, and I think that's where we're coming from.
Sometimes we hear about the new commercial historic district in San Juan. We have had for years the actual San Juan Bautista Historic District,
Yes.
which does end on that property, and that side of the street only, not across the street. And so we need to concern ourselves that that is the first or last building in the actual historic district that we have established over about 30 years here.
Our intention, if you look at A 2.5, again, was to include, was although we were moving the building up to the front, was to actually include that reconstructed porch, which would have outdoor dining. So the intent was to have outdoor dining in front as well as in between. One of the things right now that we really wanted to get away from, and part of the reason, part of the reason that we wanted to create really an alleyway behind the buildings was to create this more of a pedestrian plaza in between JJ's and the brewery. Right now, as you know, there's a driveway that goes through the middle, and so this was, from a design standpoint, what we wanted to do was really emphasize that pedestrian nature of San Juan.
Well, another point that was brought up by one of our members was that if you do move the building, then you really see the side view, which is not going to be as appealing, I think, as the current view.
I'd like to see them keep the building in the original location that it's shaped now. Because they're not creating no more garden in between them by moving that building around that much. And it gives them more room in the corner if they want to put a garden out here or tables and stuff.
Yeah,
And that way it stays more. But once they tear this building down, it's no more a history building. So we got to understand
the plan
that.
is not to tear it down. There's no plan for demolition.
No, but when if we decide that.
Yeah, well,
Dismantle it.
yeah.
One of the things that's tough also, or difficult, is on the other side of Pierce is a structure that's portable. So that
Yeah.
Did you really have to bring that?
So the view is a little impacted by
Yeah.
that, but
That belongs to the school, as you
Yeah,
know.
yeah.
And it was not our suggestion.
yeah.
It can be moved.
Okay, do we have any more questions from the commissioners? Do we have any members of the audience who'd like to ask questions of the architect? Do we have any public comments at all?
Madam Chair, fellow members of the board, my name is Robert Schmidt, and my wife and I own the building directly across from 104 the Alameda, which is 107 the Alameda. And so, in some respects, it's the end or the beginning of town, depending on how you're looking at it. We consider it certainly one of the gateways to town. And whatever is done with this project, we're looking at it as a very positive enhancement to what's currently there. And we're one of those people that a couple of years ago when we came into town and purchased our building, we didn't realize there was a building across the street. So here we are, you know, with the trees being removed, and I think like so many of our neighbors and people that we've met as we're at our building quite frequently, many of them expressed surprise, look, there's a building there. And then we would have further conversation and say, well, what we understand is proposed is I'm trying to think of the term, but anyway, a rebuild, so to speak, of the existing structure to be reminiscent or reflect the existing structure when it was built 80 to 100 years ago. And everyone that we've spoken to, from our tenants to the surrounding people of retailers and guests of our tenants, they've all been very positive of seeing the activity, number one, very positive with that. Hearing that it's going to reflect the existing structure, only structurally sound, very positive with that. Whether it's oriented left or right, up and down a little bit, I can understand the board's consideration, particular to the original orientation. But I think the one main thing that I've heard and we see that the town, I think, would benefit from, assuming this structure is taken down carefully, redone in a manner that's consistent with the historical board, is the outdoor aspect that I think a couple of you have mentioned. I think, number one, that's very positive for whether it's Hardean's or JJ's right next door or whatever. But that for this particular building, as again, as perhaps the entry to town, it'll strike that thing that this is a pedestrian friendly. It's going to have that activity of people, and when you see people, you go, maybe we want to go in there. Maybe we want to get out of our car and walk. So whatever can be done in the little plaza area, I think the front porch deck area that brings out the outdoor dining, consistent hopefully with the historical aspect. It's consistent. I think it would be a phenomenal add-on for this community. And then just one note, understanding one of the board members' comments about being concerned about it, perhaps the approvals given for the removal of the structure and stored in a warehouse. I've seen it. My wife and I used to live in Sonoma, and there was a landowner there who was forever trying to do something with their building, but never had the funds. And so essentially what happened eventually was that it fell down. And it was an old non-reinforced brick structure, earthquake standard. And anyway, it's still there in a pile. All the bricks are in a pile. And so in this case, one way or the other, I think this building's going that direction. It will fall down. I think all of us, and I think Pat, as somebody in the business, can see it's on its way there. So what can be done to bring it back to life? Perhaps, using the exterior parts of the structure and the design element and the photos that are historically, how much easier can we go as far as the exterior? We already know what it looked like 80, 100 years ago. So if the board can proceed, it definitely benefits our building and our tenants across the street. I see it definitely benefiting the entire community, and any pedestrian aspect that can be enhanced, we're full support of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Richard.
There are no speaker cards over there, by the way.
Okay. We have no secretary today either.
93 4th Street. I don't think I see too big of a problem in moving that a little bit. If you walk through town towards the brewery, I think it would look a heck of a lot better if you get a better view of it from downtown. I think that this gentleman, when he bought that property, probably paid a lot for it at that time. And I think we have to do what we can to make it really cost-effective for him. By moving it the way they planned there, I think the area between JJ and the building, they can do more with it to make it look better in that area. I think that if we not make him put too many parking spaces in there and utilize that, make it more of a walking area, would be better. And if the board has a problem with looking at it here, the left side of it, where they can always extend the porch around to give it a better look. And the bathroom is going to block the view anyway, so you won't see the side of it. I think we need to also think about making it really, really cost effective for him in order for him to follow through. I hate to see it lost. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Getting back to Mike Garvalia, the preservation architect, he went through all the possibilities. He talked about Howard Kelly of Morgan Hill, who could shore up the house and then move the house. But really what he said is if the structure is truly so destabilized to the point where we try to jack it up and things are literally starting to fall apart, if we can't tie it together, the cost of doing that becomes so prohibitive. What can be done is disassemble the building. And it sounds like that's what you're talking about. Where would you store the materials? Because if you leave anything out, it's not going to stick around.
No, I think you'd need to rent and I don't know how you'd feel about this, of actually having a storage unit on site, which would make the most sense, to rent something and store
And then
on site.
also, he said, and I'm sure you're aware, if you can't repair it, you have to replace it in kind.
Yes.
So,
yeah. And so that was really the intention.
Yeah.
And we've also worked with
Gil.
Kelly on moving buildings. We actually, if I can share kind of a funny story,
Sure.
We bought the judge's house up on, it's right at the end of, what is it, 4th Street? It was right at the corner, and we bought it several years, like 10 or 15 years ago. And we were remodeling, and the contractor, our superintendent, was jackhammering out the floor of the bathroom. His jackhammer dropped through the floor and into a basement that had been completely sealed, was not visible from anywhere. And in the dining room, we discovered a square in the floor that had been cut out of the floorboards, and it had been a speakeasy. They had, because they're downstairs, it was completely clean, except there was a little old-fashioned sink, and so it was a pretty interesting.
Where did you say that was?
It's right up at the corner. What's the corner? Gosh, I'll have to. Yeah,
It's not Third Street.
7th.
Romero's property on the end of,
yeah, Romero's
okay.
property.
Oh, Carts?
And, yeah.
Cart.
So what happened, though, was because all the original lots in San Juan were established before the late 1800s. So even though they were small lots, you could still actually execute the construction on a single lot, even though they'd been married together into larger lots. So when we bought that property, it was actually one large lot. However, it was really two small lots, and two halves of another lot behind. So what we ended up doing, because we originally were told we could only build one building, we'd constructed a 2-story addition on the second lot, and we had Howard Kelly pick it up, rotate it, move it, and connect it. So we retained the complete original historic structure in the front, and so it was quite an interesting and eventful project, particularly getting the phone call of the jackhammer dropping through the floor. So
Interesting.
I'm sorry for but I thought that was kind of
That's a good story.
so.
All right.
So in terms of reconstruction, it's really thinking about how we can disassemble and store and then reassemble. using as
Is
much
Gil
as possible.
Sanchez also a historic architect, preservation architect?
Yes. He's actually very,
Yeah.
yeah.
so.
Yeah.
Adobe.
He
Okay.
has his work, UC Santa Barbara has his archives.
Okay. All right. Are we at 5? We're going to review the initial study?
Yes.
Okay,
if we
thank you.
can.
Thank
Is
you.
there-
No one else.
Is there anybody else who'd like to speak?
Did anyone else want to speak? Maggie, did you? Okay. Okay. Then let's move on.
Okay.
They're probably
The
here
mayor
for.
back.
I have-
Are you?
I'm here for the planning commission.
That's
that
not
will-
yet.
that will be-
Yeah. Okay, you're welcome.
I've prepared the initial study, and I outlined and marked on there the items that I felt that could potentially be significant without mitigations, and I go into aesthetics, biological resources, greenhouse gas, land use, population, transportation, cultural resources, hazardous materials, public safety and services, utilities, air quality, geology, hydrology, noise, and then the mandatory findings. The 3 that I did not mark was agriculture. It wasn't affected at all. Mineral resources, it wasn't located next to any mines or anything. And in recreation, it didn't have an impact on that. And on the second page of that it gives you potentially significant impacts, potentially significant with mitigations, and less than significant and then no impact. And so if you just kind of thumb through it, and feel free to ask the questions. I took as the aesthetics was the more important thing, is that to remove as much as we can, dismantle, and then replicate the building in the architecture that we would like to see it. It would be definitely a significant contributor to the historical district of San Juan Bautista. And by restoring this building to the era in which it was built or preserved, by modifications and stuff like that, it would really bring back the many special elements of the building by protecting, enhancing, and perpetuating the city's rich cultural, social, and architectural and archaeological features. You know. And I think that with the proper mitigation that the Historical Board and the Planning Commission have, they have the capabilities to address those aesthetic needs by conditions of approval.
Okay.
The key thing here is that this is going to be a significant project, and we're going to have to go through this in case we're challenged. You know, did you go through this, or did you do what your staff told you? And this is what you don't want to get caught with. So, like Roger said, you know, under aesthetics, we don't have to concern ourselves with two items that might have an impact. And he feels, you know, staff recommends that we'll have that doing it will maintain the aesthetics because it doesn't look good now. And conditions of approval can pick up anything that might be a concern.
And when we get to all of the mitigations and stuff like that, when you get to the findings, I'm going to outline these up front here. Is the project will have been reviewed for compliance with the California Environmental Quality Act. That's paramount. You have to do that. That the project is consistent with the goals and policies of San Benito County Design Review and Historical District. Okay, that the project shall not have adverse effects on the character of historical resources or designated historical district. You know, we're going to preserve that. And that the proposal will be compatible with the appearance of the existing improvements on the site, and the new work will be compatible with the massing, scale, architecture features, and to protect the historical integrity of the property and its environment. And those are the findings that we have to make. Okay.
So that would be the findings. Now we have to make sure that whatever we have up here is consistent with what findings must be made for it to go through. So you're given four, you know, they broke it down. They say under aesthetics with the project A, B, C, and D. And two of them are clearly not, they're less of concern, but those two could be mitigated. Substantial adverse effect on scenic vista. If you do nothing, it doesn't look like heck. And would you can create a new source of substantial light or glare? That can be handled by either glare proof or our dark sky program. See, the new light was going to come out of those windows, but our dark sky policy is a mitigation. It's going to keep that light under control. And see, and you want to go into each one of these things. I mean, it's going to take time, but that's the name of the game.
So do we do that here now, or
Yes.
do we have a report come back that includes?
No, you do this now. You say, staff, we feel that there's more work needed on this, or staff, we disagree and we feel that you cannot mitigate the concerns here. It's going to be a significant impact, therefore prepare an environmental impact report. If you cannot mitigate it, then you go for an EIR.
And as we go through each one of these, do we take any further public comment, or just...
If somebody
keep
wants
it
to say something, I mean,
I would like to hear if someone has something
Well,
to
if they've
say
read
on
it-
each item, as they hear
if
it.
they've read it,
If-
they can.
Okay. Because it is available, or was on the desk.
Like I said, a lot of people don't do it, but the thing is that if there was a challenge, and you could not say, yes, as an independent commissioner, I went through this document. I read this thing today. I went through this document, and I concur with staff's findings. Or I didn't do number 7, E, I disagreed, and I put my 2 cents in, and we made the change. Then if somebody wants to challenge that, they can't get you, and they can't get the commission. And then if they take it to court, and they convince the judge is going to say, well, do an EIR. Check them around. So we would like to have everything tied up.
It behooves us is to do a thorough job
Exactly.
so that we save the applicant that delay in there, you know. Now, the second section is agriculture resources, and because it's not in an agricultural area, the project is not located in the farmland area, then I just said that it will have no impact.
So, did
Okay.
we already do aesthetics, or are we starting?
You can
think-
mark down questions you have, and then we'll go through it.
Okay.
Air quality, I've said that violation of the air quality standards contributed substantially, and that we can mitigate that. And what I'm saying is during construction, typically in air quality, dust, vibrations, noise, we can, and the air pollutants that are from grading and dismantling structures, we can control that by requiring them to have water trucks available, dismantling operations, restriction hours during high wind periods. These are typical mitigation measures that we can control to maintain the air quality during the construction.
Now, objectionable odors, I mean, brewery wouldn't bother me, but some people might be offended by smelling hops going and everything like that. So that could be a concern. But that can be mitigated. You've got your blowers, you know, you circulate air to the building, it goes through filters.
So as we go through these pages, under discussion, those will be the things that we will expect to see on the mitigated.
If it needs mitigation.
If we go through that part.
And as we go through these, is if you want, just says, make sure we elaborate on that section, then I can circle that so that
Okay.
it's there, you know. So
Have we started?
I need your input on that air quality. If there's anything there that you feel stands out that you want to elaborate on, I'll mark it.
If you feel the staff left something out, say, hey, I want to do number D again, I want more on D, we just tell him, and then when he does the document, the appropriate mitigation will be put in. We're going to have to read this thing again when he finishes. I know, this goes with the job.
Okay.
Bear in mind is that when you give me the direction to prepare a negative declaration, a mitigated declaration, we circulate that. You know, that's going to go out to the regional board, the Fish and Game, the air pollution control. They come back and give us their comments, and that helps us with our mitigation where conditions of approval. See, so it's not just you're going to make the decision. There's a lot of other people out there that are going to give us input on it. Biological resources, and I've addressed some of them. Substantial movement of any native resident migratory fish and wildlife. There's no fish and everything, but birds and nesting and stuff like that in the trees. We're concerned with it, and so we have to have certain conditions there to make sure. Now, I had put down there that my last comment was, and Mr. Ponce highlighted that, and today when he reviewed it, he says, domestic chickens in the immediate area will be controlled and restricted from the construction site to avoid injury or harm to the fowl.
To the fowl.
Hey,
To the fowl.
Only
to the fowl.
yeah, right.
See, and that's I'm sure there's
started
somebody
that.
out there
Well,
who would
maybe-
have brought this up.
Yeah.
Maybe if we keep
Yeah.
rounding them
Don't
up,
worry.
we won't have that problem.
Immediate neighbors.
How do we enforce these various mitigations? How do we enforce?
That's the monitoring that you will put on the conditions, that every one of the mitigations will have a monitoring report.
Okay, we don't do that today.
No.
No, you
They
don't do
have
that
a
now.
document yet.
No, no.
Oh, okay.
That's-
We're
Don't
just-
have the document.
That's when
We're
you get
giving
ready
them
for
enough-
the approval and the conditions of approval and the mitigations, and you get ready to make those. Those are the monitoring things.
He just needs to know what
Very,
he's
very
gonna talk
similar
about.
to what you did for the D'Ambrosio subdivision
Yeah.
and all the conditions, and you had conditions and monitoring and performance standards.
Okay.
It has been a concern to me, not that people think that what was taken down were real trees. Only a few were real trees. That's just the shrubbery that grew up
yeah.
all around, and the
that-
tree.
and
Most
that-
of those trees
and that-
were dead, and it was very evident.
And most of
when
those
you looked
trees
at
were
the trunks.
damaging the structure too.
And
Yeah.
those weren't really trees with nesting birds in them in a lot of cases.
Yeah. The fifth item was cultural resources, and again, I marked the potential less than significant with mitigation, because when you're excavating and digging around, you might end up disturbing some human artifacts and stuff, and that we will have specific wording and conditions of approval that anytime anything is found, work stops immediately, and then we contact a qualified archaeological consultant who will come in, and then he will take over the necessary investigation to make sure that there's a preserved.
Since we know that at the end of Pierce Lane or at the end of the soccer field, there was neophyte housing, and there could very well be Indian remains. I think we'd have to call Indian representatives as well.
And
But see, this will make sure
Yeah.
that if something comes up, a call is made. If a call isn't made and we get hit with something, we can go right to the guy, you violated the terms of your permit. And we'll call for the performance bond and have it fixed up.
The next, go ahead.
on A, a substantial significance of a historical resource, I think it would be helpful for us to actually establish a date for the building to be returned to, not
Well, you can think about that when you get down to
Yeah.
the conditions of approval, and what you would like to see as the heir of what it should be restored to.
if it needs to be in this document, I
Yeah.
would like to see it there, if it needs to be.
Area 6 is more geology and soils, and because it's located 800 feet from the San Andreas Fault, there is strong seismic ground shaking. So I've indicated in the thing there that the structural requirements and seismic requirements for replicating and rebuilding the thing will have to adhere to. Also a soils report and soil compaction and the bearing pressure will be monitored to make sure that the soils are capable of withstanding the weight of the structure. Right now we're seeing some collapse of some of the walls underneath the foundation now, and so I had liquefaction. The soils report will there for you that don't understand liquefaction is that when you get an earthquake and that there is high groundwater and sandy, less than dense clay material, liquefaction there is you lose all structural property, and then the building sinks out of sight.
Think of quicksand.
and that has happened, you know.
Before we leave this page, I didn't know where this would be addressed, but what about the proximity to the gas station where JJ's currently is and the gas tanks? Do we know if they're still buried under there? Have they been removed? Or at what point will that be?
That's in the next section under hazardous waste when we get there. Yeah, okay. All right. Okay. Greenhouse gas. Now, greenhouse gas, that's the green standard. Leslie is certified in that also. And my confidence there is equipment on the job will all have to have the standard mufflers, and they won't be outdated machinery. It has to be within a certain date of there to there. But then the building, when it's constructed, will have to adhere to the green standard that yeah. And 8 is what you were talking about, hazardous material, and it causes significant hazard to the public through environmental, through reasonable, foreseeable accident conditions involving hazardous waste material, and we will have to investigate that. My take on that is most of the time we will do the investigation to see if those tanks are still in the ground, you know, and have those either filled with sand or removed. The other aspect is that during construction, the monitoring, gas, oils, diesel spilled will all have to be monitored and controlled so that nothing takes place. We are always regulated by the Regional Water Quality Control Board, the Public Health Service, and the San Bernardino County Environmental Health. Hydrology and water quality. This pertains to the ability for depleting groundwater. We have 3 good wells. We have a good 1.2 million gallon reservoir. I marked less than significant with mitigations on item C, substantially alter the existing drainage patterns. What we're doing is we're putting in a parking lot with new asphalt. The coefficient of runoff is great, so we have to control the drainage. And in the design there has been some depressed drainage retention pond that can slow it down and then release it to post-flow flows. So that's incorporated in the design already.
Now, is there something about filtering for oil and stuff?
Yeah, all catch basins are fossil filtered units that have the filtering inside the catch basin before it goes down in. And then the other thing is that it is not located in a 100-year flood basin. Check the map. And that's pretty much the standard with the Regional Water Quality Control Board for sedimentation of catch basins. You have to trap that before it gets in and then goes out into the streams. Land use and planning. The district, this project will not divide any part of the community. The project is located in a historical district and is an extension of the commercial mixed-use zoning at the end of 3rd Street. It conforms to the general plan and the zoning district, and there's no existing habitat conservation plans adjacent to the near. So I classified it as no impact, you know. Mineral resources, it's not located next to a quarry or a mining resource, not unless we want to dig for gravel underneath it. Noise during construction is always a problem. I've classified A, B, and D as concerns, where we will require any type of noise suppression devices on equipment, vibration equipment, jackhammers, backup vehicles and stuff like that to minimize the noise that there are 4 residential structures directly to the east of it that could be impacted. We would restrict the hours. Normally in construction there, we restrict the hours to, say, 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning till 5 at night, and only Monday through Friday, no working on the weekends. Jackhammers, vibratory plates, and backup devices and other noise attenuation equipment will be restricted to those hours. Population and housing, again, the removal of one small 595 square foot thing, but we're going to replace it with 3 one-bedroom 510 square foot units, apartment units in size. So it will not have an effect on our housing stock, and it won't be substantially displacing a number of people. Public service, fire protection. It's normal that we make the replicated building adhere to fire sprinkler standards, where it will have fire sprinklers, and normally we have a fire hydrant and our distribution system in the Alameda. Normally what we will do is we'll probably route and have a fire hydrant in the parking lot that could come from the back side for additional fire protection. Police protection, we said that it would be less than significant. The current contract with the San Bernardino County Sheriff Department and the patrolling is adequate. There won't be any impact on schools. The majority of it will be commercial development. 1-bedrooms will probably not have children in it, so that impact won't there. Parks, there won't be any impact on parks. It will actually augment our thing because it'll have a patio and a an area in between where people can relax and mitigate. And in other public services, I said less than significant, and that would be our streets, sewer, water, and garbage, and they all have capabilities of providing service to the location. Recreation, I had no impact on the recreation. Transportation will be impacted. The existing structure is vacant and there's no traffic in and around. Once it's constructed, you're going to have incremental increase in traffic to the area, both on Franklin and the Alameda. We have wide driveways on each end and a circulation pattern so people can flow in and out. The 32 parking spaces will have handicap accessibility. The parking lot southerly to the adjacent is available for overflow parking, and that is the school lot south of the existing restroom can handle the overflow parking. The width of Alameda is presently, the traffic volume is classified as a level C in other traffic reports because it's wide enough. And the speed limit on the Alameda from Pierce Lane going towards 3rd Street is 15 miles an hour, and we intend to keep it at that direction. And we even are thought of the possibility of installing a stoplight at Franklin and the Alameda in the northbound direction.
Question on C. Is that a typo or result in air traffic patterns, including an increase in traffic levels, I'm presuming of aviation, or change in location that results in substantial safety risk? I read that as in terms of aviation as opposed to vehicles.
Yeah, you're right. That should be over there.
And no impact?
No impact? No impact, yeah, because and I think the next one too was, let's see, there was one other one in there where it had next to an airport. Yeah.
Oh, we had one earlier.
Yeah.
There was no impact.
Yeah.
D, when it talks about farm equipment, so forth and so on, I think that is incorrect, that there's no impact.
Well, I was more in terms of the design features, sharp curves or dangerous intersections,
I can
or
understand
compatible usage, i.e. farm equipment, and there's no farm equipment there, but of the dangerous and sharp dangerous curves, we're going to make sure the driveways and the sight distances are adequate for the traffic movements.
I have a lot of problems with how that traffic moves on that site and ingress, egress. We do have farm equipment using the street, going to lunch, back and forth.
Well, then we should mark that.
Tractors as well as trucks.
So I should mark that
I don't think
less than significant with mitigations, and then we can
I think
put,
that's more appropriate than no impact.
Okay. Good?
Less than significant?
Yep.
And the parking capacity, I'm going to have, I don't know how and when and where I'm going to argue that the whole parking issue at that end of town has got to come to some kind of a conclusion. I don't know whether it's on this particular piece of property or what joins it or nearby, but the parking is an issue.
Yeah. I calculated based on what they submitted there, and the parking standards, according to your municipal code, is that they would have to provide 24 parking stalls.
And I'm going to
And they proposed 32.
Our municipal code?
Our design, our municipal code.
Our municipal code does not require anyone on 3rd Street to provide parking for a commercial business. Am I right?
No, that's
In that
not correct.
section?
Yeah. Yeah.
The historic commercial district.
Yeah.
And this building this parcel is within the historic district. And for us to suddenly demand that we apply the commercial municipal code for them, I don't think it's fair.
Well, if they're offering, well, see, think of it this way. You give them a 100% parking variance. No parking required at all. No customers.
Yeah, and
They're
I
not
think-
going to be coming in there if there's no place to park, because
And I-
it's not good now,
and I
and to
think
make
that's-
it worse.
I think that's important, is you go and you look at the Windmill Market, they put parking there because that's for their customers.
Yes, and that's, it's park and ride
This
there.
project here needs parking for its customers.
Yeah.
If you don't have parking, then they're not going to have any customers.
I know
And
that's
it's
an
not going to be a
argument,
viable
however-
project.
I know-
So
I know what
it
you're
goes-
saying.
It goes hand in hand, you know.
Does
But-
anybody
but-
downtown?
Well,
Well,
the
these
question-
people want to
The
make
question there
sure.
is, do we require it? Yes, we will require it when a new building is put in. They have to pay in lieu parking if they don't have the thing.
Downtown?
Downtown.
In this commercial?
Yes, everything in the downtown area. If you build on a parcel, you will have to provide parking according to the formula. And if you don't have the land, then you pay the in lieu fee.
And all the years that we collected in lieu fees, where is that parking now?
Well, I don't know, you know.
Well, let's go back to this thing now.
Yeah.
Let's see. If you don't, okay, you said there's an ordinance that doesn't require parking on 3rd Street.
So far.
I'll take
No,
it.
I don't think it says that there's an ordinance that doesn't require it. I think that it has never been exercised.
Well, take your word for it. Okay.
Yeah.
But now, regardless of that, we're doing an initial study on a project. This initial study doesn't care what the ordinance say. They say if it's going to have a significant impact, it's going to be mitigated, or you're going to do a full EIR. And if you have to do a statement of overriding considerations, it better be real good. And you're not going to win on that one. So, these folks aren't playing games. They want their customers to come out here. If I go to your business and there's no parking, and I see parking over here, and it's a decent restaurant, where am I going to go? They see that. And what's going to happen is some of these other folks are going to have to figure, hey, city, we need to buy some empty lots. But see, we can't hit him for empty lots right now unless we want to make it a condition of approval, but then it has to be part of this program.
And I think overall, by this parking lot there right off of Franklin will alleviate some of the congestion that occurs right now.
And ingress
Because,
and egress?
yeah, no,
I don't-
because
sorry.
I can put no parking on one side.
See, we can't solve all the problems,
Yeah.
but here's one that we can solve.
Solve, yeah.
We're starting to get some parking. We're starting to, this applicant has extra room and wants to put parking in there. Not because he loves you, but because it's good business.
Or because he thought he had to. That's my...
Well, either way, it's immaterial. He's, they have not tried to get out of parking. In fact, according to the SAP,
They have
they're
more.
pushing more
Yes.
than the standard ordinance requires. Why? It's good business.
Well, I wasn't sure that they wanted the parking, or were they doing...
Well, I tell you, if they didn't have any parking, I would use this. Say, hey, you're having a significant impact. Let's go for a full EIR.
In the 1980s, the only parking they did away with on Main Street was these two lots right here that are right here in the middle of town, and then there's one down on the corner right there. And that was done in 1986, I think, or 84 or something like that.
See, and we're seeing the impacts of that now. Every time you see a tourist bus come in, or a school bus, or now you're seeing less school buses because they don't have money, and look how many parents are bringing kids in.
But you see...
But see, that's a result of a decision that was made before us. We're stuck now. How do we mitigate that?
Well, we talk with the people who are inviting all those school buses
Well,
and
we
school
want- we also
children
want them to-
and ask them for some parking.
But we also want them to come in. So,
Yeah.
the thing is, if we see lots, you may have to go into condemnation. Fifth Amendment says private property cannot be taken for public use without reasonable compensation.
I see.
And that is a tool allowed under the police power of the city. I mean, it's going to get to a point we have to do something. Buy buildings and level them. So, like I said, you got some good points. But this person's not worried about the points. I need parking for my
Because he has the
customers.
space.
And I'm glad he's got the space to put them in.
And I hope that he's...
All right,
some
moving
of
along,
those-
17, utilities and services systems.
Oh, I got one last question.
Go ahead.
If we're talking about overflow parking areas, is this owned by the applicant?
No, this is the schoolyard in front of the soccer field. The existing graveled yard,
Does he have the right to use it?
and it's open to the public.
Oh, it is. I thought
Yeah.
the district
Yeah.
controlled that. Yeah, because if he was using private property, I'd want that deeded, so that they don't put another building in there and wipe out the parking automatically.
What you're saying, Roger, is that school property there is open to the public, that parking lot?
Yeah,
The gravel park?
yeah. It's
Is that-
never been restricted. I mean, the school could close it off at any time, but they use it for parking for the recreation of the...
But there's no agreement with the
There's
city
no,
and the
there's no
school.
agreement, yeah.
Okay.
17, utilities and service systems. Storm drain, we've handled that and mitigated that. It can be mitigated, and we have sufficient water supply, providing that their services are run into the property. And it does not exceed our discharge requirements of the Regional Water Quality Control Board. So,
Roger, I have a question on the mitigation portion of that. Solid waste disposal is contracted through the San Benito County Solid Waste Department,
yeah, integrated waste. I should have said integrated waste, yeah.
but is that true of the whole city?
That's the regulatory body where they go out and they get bids from, and right now they get bids from Recology, and Recology services Hollister as well as Sandton. But integrated waste does the monitoring on that. Yeah. It's a department of the county. And I think it's the gal's name. I think.
I caught that too. Activity ecology, not integrated.
And last but not least, our mandatory findings. Does the project have the potential to degrade the quality in the environment, substantially reduce the habitat of fish and wildlife species, cause fish and wildlife populations to drop below the self? And I just says less than significant. We don't have any there. Does the project have impacts that are individually limited but cumulatively considered? It means that the incremental effects of a project considered when viewed when connected with the effects of past projects, the effects of other current projects, and the effects of probably future projects.
Yeah.
And I'd say less than significant. And finally, does the project have the environmental effects which will cause substantial adverse effects of human beings, either direct or indirect?
There you have it. We have not gone through this, given staff some direction on things that we found independently. He'll prepare the appropriate documentation and the mitigations for each one of these items. So be ready to read a bigger one. But I think as we go through with this, especially with the Planning Commission, the more you do with these things, they're going to go faster.
That's okay. Did anyone have anything to say about what we just did?
Anyone from the
Any
public?
comments?
Not to belabor it too much, but on the parking, our building is parked according to the current standards. And when there's special events in town, we put up a folding sign in the middle of the driveway on our property saying tenant parking only. If we don't do that, we're the default parking lot where our tenants' parking is. And in this, since it's right across the street and we have a nice breezeway between, I know that would be like a great place to park and walk right over to this new facility. The parking is always, less attractive. There's no two ways about it, but that's how we get around in the 21st century. So the fact that the parking is behind the plaza, so to speak, and potential fountain there, I think it'll serve take some of the load off, perhaps for like JJ's and well, I don't know if they're supposed to be cross parking, so to speak, but they will. Inevitably, people are going to park where they can find a space. So,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so
So,
chief staff has enough to work with.
yeah. So Roger, you know what you need to do.
Well, in reviewing what I've prepared, I've indicated on my staff report there that I need directions there to make determination based on the initial study and information provided that the proposed project could have a significant effect on the environment, and that a mitigated negative declaration with mitigation measures and conditions of approval be prepared that could be required, that would be required for the project, that would be less than significant effect on the environment would occur.
So that could be required or that would be required?
Would be required, yeah. Could be required for the project at less than a significant, yeah.
But,
That could be.
But are we not demanding that it will be? It's more assertive, I think,
That's
to
when
say
you put it
would.
up there. This is the recommendation, because they'll
Oh,
have a
okay.
document. Your project goes through if you do these mitigations, if you do them, but it doesn't say do them.
Okay.
Your planning commission approval says, number one, read your statement and look at the mitigations, comply, and here's the monitoring of it. So we don't say just, I don't know, check the fire extinguishers every year. You say, so-and-so will do this. We'll sign off. So now we know who's going to do it when, not just do it maybe. They get very specific on this.
So at this time, then, we need a recommendation. We need to make a recommendation to the Planning Commission to, what?
For staff to...
Well,
Yeah, for staff to
the
provide the-
board has reviewed the initial study and finds that with the recommended mitigations could be adopted as a mitigated negative declaration. And
Is that your motion?
recommends the planning commission that they concur with that finding.
Is that a motion?
Sure.
Okay. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Good. Okay. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Sounds good.
Any opposed? Okay, the motion carries.
And so ordered.
And it's awarded. So now we'll move on.
Roger, will that give you the direction you need?
Yep.
Moving on to consider recommendation to the Planning Commission for a sign permit in the city's historic district at 322 3rd Street, Cafe 15.
Does anybody in there?
Madam Chair, members of the Historical Resources Board, in front of you tonight is a sign application from Cafe 15 at 322 3rd Street. The applicant is requesting sign approval for an oval hanging sign to replace the existing oval sign, which was the Donkey Deli German restaurant. The sign will be similar in size, and it will protrude over the right-of-way in a diagonal alignment and hang from the existing brackets. And I think the applicant is here. Yeah, he's in the back. Yep. No, I guess not, yeah. So
I kept wondering where the 15 came from, and then the San Juan Star informed us.
The 15th mission.
The approval of the sign and the recommendation of the Planning Commission is that it's categorically exempt because it's a minor alteration and it falls under the CEQA guidelines under existing facilities under Section 15.3.111, Class 11, on-premise signs.
What's going to happen to the donkey?
The donkey is still painted on the wall as a
Yeah.
mural, and they didn't indicate whether they were going to take it down or not, so, or paint it over. So.
So, is it going to stay or isn't it?
Well, as far as I'm concerned, I move to approve.
I like the fact that they use the same sign
Yeah.
and the same brackets.
Same
and
format,
just-
with just the
Yeah.
oval.
Did that minimize their fee?
Yes.
Yeah.
Sure did.
Good.
I'm glad they kept the
brackets, yeah, that's
gingerbread,
yeah.
steel gingerbread, hardwood.
Okay, commissioners, do you have any comments?
Move to approve.
Well, should we
Oh,
go
no,
to
wait a
public?
minute, we're not approving, we're recommending, aren't we?
Yeah.
Yes. And we-
Okay.
did anybody have-
Is there anyone from the audience who'd like to comment on the sign, the Cafe 15 sign? Okay. Then,
It would be necessary before you make the recommendation is to find that the sign is categorically exempt under
Okay.
CEQA 1301 and 1311.
Okay, I move that the board find the approval of this sign categorically exempt under CEQA, the appropriate sections of CEQA.
okay, do we have a second?
I'll second that.
All right, and we'll vote on it. All in favor?
Aye.
The motion carries.
Okay, having found it exempt, I move that we recommend the Planning Commission that they approve the sign as presented to us.
I second.
I do.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
And that carries. Next item is to recommend to the Planning Commission prohibiting school and charter bus parking in the historic downtown district. I'm wondering if we should, and I don't know if it's too late now, but perhaps we should restrict by the length of the vehicle, because then that would include RVs as well.
Yeah, I've approached a couple of them. I walked down, and I told them, I says, if we prohibit parking along here, where would you park? And none of the bus drivers knew. Most of them are school bus drivers.
Yeah.
And,
Well, I
and
think
we
it would-
really don't have an area to send them to.
That'd be fine.
I think it would be incumbent upon the mission and the state park to, when they send out their letters, to say parking is here, here, and here.
You know.
But then that's a problem for RV.
I'd love to have the church property open to them, because that would be just a ideal spot for them.
Yeah.
But has that meeting ever been held? We talked about this last month, that then that's the message we got to send to the council, that there's nothing we can do. There's absolutely nothing we can do. So I move that we recommend to the city council that they set up a meeting between the state, the church, and the city regarding access to larger lots.
I thought we did that the last meeting.
No, it was a discussion item, so now it's an action item.
Now it's an action item. So that's my motion. Because like I say, there's nothing we can do.
Okay.
Set up
So-
a meeting or committee.
No, however the council wants to handle it, it's not one of ours. So to the council, that they set up a meeting between the church, the state, and the city. And not, forget about the separation right now, we want them together to work with it.
They might as well include the school for the discussion.
And the school,
Yeah.
and the school board, yeah,
That's good.
good point.
Yeah.
Put it this way, these are the stakeholders, these are the ones that have the land.
Dave, is any church members attending your strategic committee?
There is.
There is?
Father Jim.
Father
Yeah.
Jim?
Yeah.
Can't get much better than that.
Sounds like another good committee.
Was there a second?
Parking.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion, we have a second, all in favor?
Excuse me.
Yes.
Public comment, please.
Sure.
Richard Ponce, 93 4th Street. I think a simple way to get around it to keep them from parking in our historical district is that I'm pretty sure that we require only one vehicle per parking space, and those buses take 3 or 4 parking spaces. So I think that could solve the problem.
Good idea.
Good idea.
But see, that's still,
That's out of our,
that still runs us, okay, boss, I've got 50 kids on this bus, where do I park? We have to have a place where you can put large vehicles, and we know where there's a couple in the city. But again, we can't change an ordinance. We can't adopt an ordinance. So our recommendation is, hey guys, meet and talk about this. We're getting pressure down here.
Any other comments from the public? Okay,
Who seconded the motion?
Pat Garrett. So we have a first and we have a second. Shall we vote on this? All in favor?
Aye.
And none opposed, so that motion carries. Selection of local business or property owner for annual certificate of recognition, since May is National Preservation Month. So, who wants to start? I have someone in mind, but let's hear what you all...
But we had some suggestions from our last meeting.
We did?
Do we need to say those again?
And by the way, before I forget, I wanted to go on record that Caravanc wrote us a letter regarding the brewery, and...
Oh, got to accept that into the...
Yeah, can you do that now?
Sure.
Okay,
If
so...
that's part of it.
And I have a copy of it, and we'll put that in as part of the record.
Okay, all right,
And
thank you.
was it a new one?
Yeah.
Based
Yes.
on what
we
she
just
said last time?
No, this is a new one, a
So
recommendation,
can
yeah.
we get copies of that eventually?
Well, she
Go
emailed
ahead and read
it.
it.
Okay,
Oh, it was
well,
on
So
the
you gotta
email
accept
to all
it
of
into-
us?
she...
Is it to the commission?
It's to the commission.
Oh, to the board?
Do you want me to read the whole thing, or just...
Read the,
No.
read it. It's as if she was standing there.
Okay. Dear members of the Planning Commission and Historic Resources Board, the San Juan Star reported the on-site brewery visit. One of the comments reported concerned lack of the building's code compliance. The project architect and the board commission should be aware of California's Historic Building Code. The entire code and how to use it is listed on the California State Architect website. Click on the last item in the right-hand column, State Historic Building Code Board. The code is performance-oriented instead of specification-oriented. This means that if the safety policies can be achieved through some other more non-invasive means, then it is okay. For example, railings that are lower or stiles spaced wider than specified in the building code can be made safe with the addition of glass, screening, or other addition to make the railing safe without destroying the historic fabric. The Historical Building Code has been extensively used in San Diego's Victorian gas lamp quarter in the renovation of old hotels in consultation with the fire department dealing with exit sprinklers, etc. Mr. Garrett mentioned that the health department wouldn't let Margot's keep the historic cladding in the ice cream parlor. A similar issue was dealt with at the Napa California Culinary Institute, housed in the Historic Rock Brewery. The Historic Building Code was used to install glass panels over the historic walls in the commercial kitchen, creating hygienic walls that meet the purpose of the code. I'm attaching my earlier comments urging restoration of the historic building and suggesting conditions. If the board commission is inclined to allow demolition, then at minimum it should require the following conditions. Number 1, articulate the overriding conditions that make this project special and different from other historic resources within the city. 2, no issuance of a permit to demolish without first the issuance of a building permit for the replacement structure and project for the property involved. Include landscaping, parking, etc. Require evidence that funding is in place to complete the project. Prepare HABS, which means Historic American Building Survey, or Historic American Engineering Record, written and photographic documentation before demolition as recommended in the Galvin Report. Prepare an oral history before demolition as recommended in the Galvin Report. Thank you for considering my comments. Caravanc.
Okay.
So will we have to have a building permit for the brewery?
Oh, after you get the
After that,
approval
yeah,
and everything,
wait.
yes.
Lots
Yeah.
of-
Okay.
So actually, we should put that into the planning commission minutes.
Also,
Yeah.
Okay. So where were we? We're going to, so last month when Cara was here, she said she recommended Ron and Alma Pak of the clock shop and the natural food store, and she also commended the home across from her house on 3rd Street that has just been painted a pretty shade of blue. Was there another business?
But we were...
We're only focusing on commercial.
We're only focusing on
Yeah.
commercial.
I'm going to go ahead and just say what I'm thinking, and it's just my opinion, but I was thinking of Ron and Alma Pak myself because they own the property at 215 and 217 3rd Street. It's the clock shop and the natural food store next to it. He had to do a lot of work on that property because the drainage on that street was terrible. The water was going from the sidewalk down into the subflooring, sub-buildings. So he did a lot of the work himself, probably just about all of it, and he brought to the interior of the building, he had a lot of fixtures and all from a Rexall drugstore from Oklahoma. So he's used a lot of old materials to repurpose that building. And that's why he's my vote. So do you have choices you want to recommend?
I don't have any.
Ernest?
No, I'm good. I concur. There's a lot of work was done on that. And then when it was 2 women's clothing stores, and now it's a clock shop. And the food is pretty good.
Yeah.
Can't complain about
Georgiana?
He came to our attention by adding some things that were not required of him, the siding and so forth and the roof, and he's really put up with a lot of grief over the years and finally completed a very successful building there.
I'm all for it. He did a great job on that building.
Okay.
And
Then
his wife as well.
I'd like to
putting up with it.
at least comment on
Of course.
the home that I grew up in.
Yeah.
Was recently restored, so,
Oh, on the
Yeah,
property next
on
to you.
First
Yeah.
Street.
Yeah.
so.
And
the
that was
ta-
done.
The tank house and the home.
Yeah.
So,
And that was done by a local craftsman.
Yep.
By Rick
it
Morales.
sure was, yeah.
And thus far, we're just doing
But at least
commercial
a
buildings,
mention.
but certainly we should mention
Yeah.
private residences as well.
And I think that's a great idea
Yeah.
that we maybe include residential sometime in our
Mm-hmm.
near future.
It would be a
The
second
mentions would
category.
be-
We could do one
Separate.
commercial, one
Uh-huh.
residential.
Yeah.
And,
And what about the Zeller home?
Hmm?
The Zeller home?
Yeah, that's been recently redone.
That was good. The beauty of the one you're talking about, your former family residence, was that Rick came here early when we first encouraged people to come and ask what's going on in that informal application area. And he was one of the first people to come.
And it was a successful
It's
project.
very educational to have someone come. It educates us.
Okay.
Well, at this point, we're dealing with commercials, and we've been dealing with commercial in the historic district. And I concur. I think a residential category would be good because that would spread it out to the whole town. But at this time, since we're dealing with commercial and in the historic district, I would move that the clock shop be designated as our local business, a certificate of recognition.
And include the natural
Yeah, the natural food
food
store.
place.
Oh,
It's this whole
The-
part.
Yeah, the whole-
yeah, it's part of the
Yeah.
same, one building, two
One-
shops. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay,
no,
do we
that's the
have a
one.
second for that?
I'll second it.
Okay. First and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay,
How
very
do you
good.
spell his last name?
P-A-U-K.
Oh, okay.
So next time we're going to start
P-A-U-L-K.
mentioning, or we're going to include residential?
I think, okay, the next item is future agenda items. I think that next month we should put
Talk
that on
about
an action item or a discussion item?
This is really a planning commission issue. Maybe they
Okay,
want to take that up.
okay.
Did we recommend to the planning commission that this
Yeah,
now on the
it's a
motion?
recommendation.
Yeah.
Okay, do we have any future agenda items? Anything we want to talk about next month? I'm sure we'll be talking about the brewery for a while.
You had the historic ordinance included in our packet this time. Thank you very much.
that was a
Went
lot.
through that. Sometime in the near future, we might decide whether or not we were going to tackle that whole problem.
As soon as we finish the sign ordinance.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the sign-
One step at a time.
Yeah.
This is the small print that they don't tell you when you get
Yeah.
when you get appointed to a commission.
Okay, no items for the future agenda? You can always let me know later. Comments then from board members?
I'm good.
I'm good.
Okay, city manager?
None?
Okay, then I adjourn this meeting of the Historic Resources Board
And what time do you want to give it?
at, I don't know.
7:45?
7:45, let's say.
7:43. Oh, I tell you what.
You're going to be precise, I know.
7:42.
Okay.
Close.
You're up.
3-minute warning.
Okay, they're ready to start.
Yeah. Something, yeah.
Pull a gavel over here.
Okay.
Okay, this is the meeting of the Planning Commission of the City of San Juan Bautista, California. Today is Tuesday, May 7, 2013. time is about 6:45. Is there any questions about the agenda? Oh, wait a minute,
Yes.
call to order. No one has left since we moved in here, so I'll just accept that as a full quorum here. The agenda.
Do we need to add a 5D to accept the recommendation of the Historic Resources Board for the selection?
we should.
Okay.
Accept HRB rec regarding, what are we calling this again?
Certificate of recognition.
Certificate of recon, okay. Okay, any other changes, additions, or comments to this?
Mr. Chairman, I move the approval of the agenda as presented with the addition of 5D proclamation from the Historical Review.
A second?
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. This is a time for public comment. If you have an item, if you want to discuss something, and the item is on the agenda, please wait until we come to that point, and your comments will be included with that whole packet. If it is not, if it's related to anything not on the agenda, this would be the time to do it. You know, if you want to tell us how good a job we're doing, this will be the time because it isn't any place else on the agenda. So would you like to speak, sir?
Yes. Good evening. My name is Jerome Peters. Currently I'm a resident in the San Jose area. And I'd like to introduce myself a little bit. I was born and raised in San Diego, California. I moved up here about 20 years ago. I'm married, wife with 3 kids. And I just recently purchased the property on Saline Scrape Road, right outside of town. Don't know if anybody's familiar with it. It's 34 acres. And so I bought that from the Nylands. And on that property is a water pipe that hooks up to the city water service. And I'm trying to figure out what does it take to get a meter on that line. And so I'm asking for your help and guidance on how to proceed.
2 things. Well, I guess one thing to start with. It's outside. This sounds like it's outside the city limits.
The property itself is.
Right. So what I'd like to do is refer you to staff who would have a bigger picture of who the other players are outside the city limits. Staff, is that?
Yeah.
Dan Latt?
It's outside the city limits. It's not in there. A water line was constructed probably 30 years ago by Hardin Island as a water line that served watering troughs for his cattle on the 62 acres and 35 acres. It is 1.25 inches to 1.5 inches in size, and it goes from the right at the beginning of Salinas Grade Road and the old Stagecoach Road on the northerly side of the road all the way up to the 35 acres, probably about 3/4 of a mile. It is a private line that was put in by Mr. Nyland, and our service cutoff valve is at our main right there at the old Stagecoach Road. And we don't have a meter on it because it was a flat rate that was billed to the Nylands for years as 3 connections for water feeding troughs for the cattle.
And it was serviced by the well in the canyon and not our whole system?
It's served by our water distribution system. It's
The whole
connected
thing?
to our whole system, yeah.
Oh, so it's city water
Yeah.
going to the county.
Now,
Okay.
the well number 3 has a line that comes down the old Stagecoach Road, and then it comes down and connects to the line that comes up to the San Juan Hollister Road that comes from wells 2 and 3, and then it goes into the city and distributes throughout the distribution system.
And there are people who are on Mission Vineyard who are hooked up to our system,
Yes,
who are out
yes.
in the county as well?
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
I don't know what that means to this
Yeah.
issue, however.
So how can we help? You can. He should meet with you, or where should he?
He has to come in and then meet with us and everything like that, yeah.
Yeah, Mr. Grimm's is our city manager also.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there any rules or reasons to disconnect that line? I mean, is there something happening citywide saying, if you're out of the city limit, we're no longer going to serve you?
The rule is that any water services for development has to get approval from LAFCO, because that's out of our, from LAFCO. Local Agency Formation Commission.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if there's an existing line and it's been used?
I said for development. That's a difference between agriculture use and development.
Okay.
And there's a distinction between it.
Okay, so if I want to use it for agricultural purposes...
You can continue to use it because that's what's been existing, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, I appreciate your...
Right, and if you get any other problems with it, just call Mr. Grinsley at his office, to meet with if you need, want to go into this farther.
Okay.
He's a nice guy.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes. Oops, it's your turn.
Bob Reed, 1133 Salinas Road. I'm speaking because I'm a neighbor, and I'm concerned because his water has been turned off. We have city water as well, and we are also not in the city limits. The occupant of the parcel just the other side of James Dassel had a water connection with a meter, and that was turned off.
No, so I think you're incorrect. The Harris's was not turned off.
Not the Harrisons. That's where I am.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's the Isha Foundation.
The Isha Foundation. Yeah.
That they had, and both of those properties, both Jerome's and the Isha Foundation, were leasing pasture land to cattle, and the water was turned off.
And it was turned back on because we had to repair a connection on it.
Okay, so the water, so there is water.
It's turned back on, yes.
But there was some confusion about what it was going to take to get that water turned on. And then we were understandably a little nervous about the people around us having their water turned off. We just wanted you to be aware of that.
Thanks for bringing up a good point, Bob. I think people really need to feel free and comfortable to call Roger. I'm sorry if I'm doing this, Roger. But Roger's very easy to work with, and I think if you have questions like that, really he'd be your first.
This is really a city council decision, not ours, on the water. This is between you and them, and the city council has to make the ruling.
Yeah, on water that serves development, it's a policy decision. They'll have to go through LAFCO.
Right.
Yeah.
However, this is public comment. Anything can be heard. It is a perfect venue to stand up and say what the public needs to know. And I think...
Well, we've been working to make the Planning Commission your first line of access to City Hall. We've done this now for a couple of years, I guess. But so if anybody brings anything up, we'd be glad to direct you to the right people like we did this time. So don't tell your friends and associates. Don't hesitate to come down to the meeting. Or if you know what the problem is already, you can talk to Mr. Grinsley. But key thing is, this is your first approach to hitting City Hall. You start here, you go to the City Council, but your Planning Commission, it does represent you.
And it gets into television, and we may not have the right answers. But we certainly will try.
But we do try harder. Okay.
I just got one question about agricultural usage of city water. And you're saying that San Juan Bautista serves agricultural land with its city water in all around its city limits? Pretty much?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Like within our sphere of influence? Like Earthbound too? Or
Really? Oh, okay. Out there. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, next we have the consideration of the CEQA and mitigated negative declaration requirements at 104 the Alameda for the project, the brewery, and the applicant was Hipólito Cerda. Okay, now we went through this at the meeting of the Historical Review Board. Now, the Planning Commission, the HRB is the Planning Commission, so we don't have to hear it twice unless you want to. So the recommendation there was that the Planning Commission accept the the initial study and have a mitigated negative declaration prepared for this project. Does that everybody concur with what that? Mm-hmm. Okay. Mm-hmm. So with that, do we want to do that? I'll take a motion on that. We made some changes. We added some stuff.
Sure. Make a motion to accept it, to approve it, to go forward with the mitigation,
Yeah.
and to also to make changes as we found today that need to be changed. So I make a motion that we approve that.
Okay, so you have a motion to accept the initial study with the changes and recommended changes. And staff would be directed to prepare the mitigated negative declaration, and we'll consider it at that time. That's your motion?
Yes.
Second?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. Okay, that was quick.
Did we do A, approve affidavit of posting?
Yeah. Oh, no, we didn't. Tell you what. Okay, since the deputy city clerk wants to great extents to post and legal notices of our meeting, I'll call for a motion, and she signed her name to it. I'll call for a motion to accept it.
I'll make a motion that we approve, that we accept the affidavit of posting agenda.
I second it.
Favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. Okay, thank you. Okay, now we're down to consideration of a sign permit in the city's historic district at 322 3rd Street. Cafe 15, or I would say Cafe 15, applicant Florinda Zoyton. Okay, so we saw this one. It's on the HRB found that it was exempt from CEQA and recommended its approval. So I would call for a motion to make the accept the recommendation that it is exempt from CEQA and that the sign be approved as presented.
And adopt the resolution.
Oh, and adopt a resolution. Oh, we didn't have a resolution here. But adopt a resolution stating accordingly.
I'll make a motion that we exempt it from CEQA and that we approve the sign permit and that, what was the other one? That we accept the resolution?
By resolution, yeah.
By resolution.
And staff will prepare it appropriately. Okay, second?
Second.
In favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, unanimous. Okay, next we have the Historical Review Board recommended that we adopt a certificate of recognition for the building known as the Clock Shop and its adjoining restaurant to Ron and Alma Pauk. Now, the Planning Commission has had, again, to let people know that we're here and to connect with folks, a program of recognizing buildings that have been brought up to the historical standards, using major work, using local people, found products to make it look like as in its original condition. And these folks have gone, we feel, above and beyond in making that corner something that we want in the city. It looks like it's been there forever. It's a reuse of an old building. It's brought up to standard, but again, you wouldn't know that because they kept it looking like an old timer. And a clock shop is definitely something that really looks good in that building. And the store next door is Health Foods for folks who have gluten intolerance. There's a lot of products for them. And they serve on a back deck. And they also serve inside and on the sidewalk, small tables. So it's a nice place depending where you want to sit that day. And I think for all these things, for all these reasons, do you have a resolution on that? Do you have the resolution document?
Oh, yes. Somewhere.
Just put it away.
I don't know what it gives us.
Blue paper.
Too much stuff here.
Okay, we'll put it in the whereas and wherefores.
Fill in the blanks.
Here, here.
Yeah, we don't need.
Okay, what's going to happen here is that we read this at the Historical Review Board meeting, and they're the ones who recommended that we adopt it. So our adoption will be to adopt the certificate of recognition, naming them as the folks who are being recognized this year. And we will make the presentation of the certificate to them at the next City Council meeting,
May 21st.
May 21st, and they will be recognized appropriately at the council meeting, and I expect the mayor will probably have some things to say. We will present the certificate. And that's what we want to keep doing. As you noticed tonight, there was discussion, why limit it even to once a year? We can do more. Why limit it to residential? Because a lot of the residential people have been fixing up their houses. It may be economically good, but they're sticking their necks out, putting a lot of money into an older building, but it maintains the ambiance of why people want to live in the city of San Juan Bautista. So next meeting we'll be discussing what to do about residentials and how many of these commercials we want to do a year. So, unless somebody wants me to read this thing, I will just accept it, and we will finish it off and make a nice presentation. So I'm asking for a recommendation to adopt the certificate of recognition for
Clock shop.
Ron and Alma Pauk of the Clock Shop and what's the name of her building?
Natural Resources or
Natural
something.
Resources. Do I
I'll make a
Yeah,
motion.
somebody-
I'll make a motion that the Planning Commission accepts the resolution by the Historic Resources Board honoring or naming Ron and Alma Pauk as the next recipient for this certificate of recognition.
Is there a second?
I second it.
Anybody in favor?
Aye.
Oh,
Opposed? Unanimous.
and who will deliver the proclamation?
That will be,
Can
I
you do
have-
that? The Planning Commission chairperson?
that's you.
If it goes to the job, I guess I'm stuck, but I have no problem delegating.
Amanda did it last year.
When I was
Okay,
in your
you
shoes.
started the tradition then.
Yes.
Okay, that's done. Now, discussion items. You saw in the San Juan Star, there's a small article about what happened at the last Planning Commission meeting. You notice it's not minutes, it's not details, it's not how the game was played, it's just a scorecard. If you want to know anything more about it, you go back to the official records or to the Deputy City Clerk and get the written stuff. But I just wanted the folks to know there is a Planning Commission, we do things, and here's what we did at that last meeting. And if you notice, not too far away, there was another one by the Historical Resources Board, and again, the scorecard, what they did. And I think, speaking for myself, I will continue to do that.
I will continue what I just did for the first time.
And the chairman of the HRB tells me she'll be doing the same thing. So I don't know whether they're going to keep doing it as individually or put them together as A and B. But we just want you to know that the Planning Commission is out there working. So if you see something out there that doesn't look right, let us know, and we'll get to it. Okay, sign code status. The way we work this is that we meet 2 times a month, second and fourth Thursdays, as a committee of the whole. But because the committee is the entire Planning Commission, it's under the auspices of the Brown Act, and so I have designated Vanda Guibert to be the chairperson of the committee of the whole. And so I'll let her tell us where we are right now.
Well, we're meeting this Thursday, so we need to notice the city, Roger. Is Trish going to be back, do you think?
Yeah.
So I guess I'll email her in the morning and
Yeah,
remind her.
and she'll noticed it for a public meeting,
Okay.
yeah.
And we're getting close to the end. We've spent a lot of time on it. I think we're pretty proud of it. We'll see how it's received. And we'll just be sending it back to City Council, so it'll be up to them to determine its future.
Yeah,
After-
but before we go to
yeah,
the,
we'll
before we
be-
go to the city council,
Yeah.
we'll be having public participation from the merchants here.
Yeah. We'll work on a timeline, I think, the next meeting.
Yeah.
The intent here is to have a document that goes to the council that they said done a great job. And I don't want the council to sit there and discuss all kinds of items. If it needs to be discussion, it has to be discussed down here where we're putting it together. Not to get slammed on the side, pulling out an item that may be related to everything else inside. But by us knowing what the problems are, we put them down, we make it integrated to the rest of the document. So when it goes up to council, it should be one item that has been vetted by the business community, residential community, and anybody who's interested in the city.
Mr. Chairman, I believe that we are considering not just day meetings, perhaps evening meetings on a schedule so we can meet with people after work.
We can talk about it.
Yeah, talk about that this meeting.
Yeah. We'll be meeting this Thursday morning, 9 o'clock here, the sign committee.
And it's
Sign
9 to 10:30. So
And it's
don't-
open to the public.
And the current draft is available?
No, not yet.
Okay. Next,
It will be.
we have a certified local government certification matter. You okay with that?
It must be leftover from last month.
Oh, okay. No problem. We just wiped that one out. Staff, do you have any comments?
None?
No comments. Okay. Future agenda. Excuse me. Future agenda items. Then we designated two: certificate of recognition,
Residential?
recognition, residential, and then number of commercial.
What's number 2?
Number of commercial. Do we want to do it once a year?
Oh,
Twice
okay.
a year?
Yeah.
More often, less often? I mean, we've been busy with sign code, but we may want to start looking around. If the folks start putting more investment in those buildings, I want to recognize them on a regular basis.
Did we finish with the list of people last time who had conditions on former permits that were not resolved? Did we finish with that?
No, we haven't finished it, and I've got some more data that I'm going to give to you at your next meeting.
So we can
I've
discuss
dug
that
up
again?
some more data, yes.
Okay, so we'll have...
Because I
permits.
left that whole packet part in this binder
Yeah.
to refer to.
Yeah. I have met with Harvey's Locker and the contractor today, and they're going to gear up on some of the issues, not all of them, but they're going to progress on it. So I told them that the commission is adamant that they want compliance.
Good.
We know what to do. Okay, any other items that you want to talk about? Okay. Planning Commission, do you have any comments?
Nope.
No comments from the commissioners.
Useless.
Staff?
None?
None from staff. Okay, there being no other items on this agenda, call for a motion for adjournment.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
Favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. What time is it?
It is 6 after.